Embers of Hope by Nyan Sangetsu, Chapter 11, Going for a Walk, Part 1. All I ask for is grandbabies. Lots and lots of grandbabies. Maybe a redhead or two. Is that too much to ask? Mom! What? Your sister's much too young. Someone's got to do it. Salem and her son. Going for a walk. Mercury knew a thing or two about loyalty. He was loyal to Cinder for prying him away from his father. He was loyal to Salem for returning his semblance to him. He was loyal to Naruto, both for showing him the ropes around here and putting up with his bullshit as long as he had. Really, Kid gave as good as he got, but that wasn't the point here. Where was he? Yes, he remembered now. Loyalty. For you see, above all, Mercury Black was loyal to himself. Nothing personal, really. Life was like that. At the end of the day, you had to look after number one. No other way about it. When the chips were down, the lights off, and everyone gone home, you were alone. Nobody. That was for the best. Maybe that was for the best. You couldn't betray yourself after all. Yourself could never turn on you. Yourself would never sell you out for a bit of lien. Yourself would never beat you, abuse you, use you like an old rag and throw you away when it was done. What greater loyalty could there be? He was still loyal to himself, even when he sold his soul to the devil herself. Protect my son, she said. Be his bodyguard. Be his friend. If any harm comes to him, it'll be your head. Obey his every command. Do so, and I will reward you beyond your wildest dreams. It's simple, right? He'd taken worse jobs. This would be no different. Or so he told himself. It should have been a simple task, just like any other. Protect this Naruto fellow. That was all he had to do. Just keep his distance, accompany him on the occasional foray outside the tower, and make certain no one tried to bash his head in. Easy. But then the blonde bastard befriended him. He actually did. Looking back, he wasn't sure when it happened. It was an insidious process, a slow encroachment of his very self that he never noticed until it was too late. Somewhere over the years, Mercury found he'd come to care about the cheeky little shit he was meant to protect. Oh, they had fought and squabbled and scrapped as boys are wont to do, butted heads more than once, even played a few pranks on each other at their worst. Against near all odd, they'd moved past it and become fast friends. The best of friends, really. Nowadays, they terrorize the denizens of the tower with tricks and traps so convoluted that Atlas itself would be green with envy. Not on the girls, though. Nope, never them. There were some lines you didn't cross, not if you wanted to live. Half the women in the tower were pining for after Naruto these days. He treated the other half like siblings or aunts. Made him jealous sometimes. It did. Bloody blonde, pretending to be thicker than he was. Naruto could play the waiting game all he wanted, but sooner or later he would have to choose between them. Girls were tricky like that. Either he was playing the long con, unlikely, or going for a different angle entirely. In the beginning, it had been an idle curiosity, but now he actually found himself invested in the outcome. Might as well hang around and see what came of it. Never a dull moment these days. There was no con here, no trick, no ruse. These people were batshit crazy, and this was a good gig. A free room and board, wherever he wanted, and a family who cared for him. He didn't want to lose it, and so he watched as his charge beat Cinder fall within an inch of her life. He watched as she conceded defeat, watched as she reared up and tackled him, observed as they grappled with one another. Cinder won that grapple and rammed her lips to his, dragged him to the shadowy corner concealed by some pillars, and kept him there for a time. The Winter Maiden emerged amid litter, looking quite pleased with herself. She sauntered past him, a smile hip swaying. Not a word, assassin. Mercury whistled softly to himself. It seemed the fall had fallen for the resident lord at last. That was an awful pun, and he didn't regret it for a moment. Maybe he'd actually use it sometime, provided there was someone he could throw between himself and Cinder at hand. He watched her glide away with a smile, and he laughed. For once, his smile felt genuine, real. Guess this was his life now. Not so bad, he found. He turned that smile on a grinning Naruto when he emerged. Finally won, Finally won, Huh? Mercury was waiting for him near the entrance, grinning like a madman. Naruto wasn't surprised to find his old friend hiding in the shadows. On the contrary, he'd come to expect it these days. Snarky bastard liked to lurk, assassin training and all that. His semblance made it easier for him to hide himself better than most, and the hide he had now. Cinder had been far too pleased with herself to take issue with him when she slipped out, or maybe she had and simply didn't care. Then again, she had good reason to be pleased. Unbuttoning his hand rose to his lips. Mercury saw it too. He grinned at the cheeky prick. Ren and Whitley were all right. Great guys to pal around with really, but he and Mercury simply got on better than most. He couldn't quite say why. Perhaps it was the latter's roguish disposition. Maybe Merc just got him in a way most didn't. He encouraged his pranks in a way few others would, and proved himself a constant font of inspiration for even better tricks and traps, much to the dismay of others. And another girl joins the harem. His old friend rolled his eyes in mild mockery. Lucky bastard. Me? Nah. Naruto looked away, feigning a whistle. I don't have a harem. Are you blind? Not really. He scratched the back of his head, trying not to stare at Cinder's retreating form, or her swaying hips. Maybe if I play dance, they'll let me be. It was a vain hope, one he knew he couldn't possibly sustain, but he felt he had to try for decency's sake. He just couldn't bear to choose between them. Picking one would upset the others, which would in turn lead to all sorts of arguments and nastiness he had no desire to deal with. Of course, there was another option, but that terrified him even more. Not a chance. Mercury slapped him on the back, drawing him from his maudlin thoughts. Come on, let's get you cleaned up. Drinks are on me. My treat. Merc, this is my home. Everything's free. Semantics. At this moment, he would have lived nothing more than to simply share a drink with him and let his stress bleed away. In all honesty, it was tempting. He knew he couldn't, but the urge to simply kick back and put up his feet and whittle the day away did nothing. After the week he'd had, he just couldn't do it. That said, I can't do that. Weiss and Winter are expecting me. When the assassin quirked a brow, he elaborated. White Fang raid. It's a bit of a test run for the future. Ouch. His shadow whistled. A date with the Schnee sisters, Now that he phrased it like that, the blonde blanched. It really isn't. You know what? Take the day off. We won't need you for this op. You sure? To his credit, Black did his relief well. Salem would have my hat. Do I have to make that an order? Fine. Message received, Your Highness. Good luck with the girls. I'd rather stick with one. This again. You've mentioned her a few times now. Naruto quirked a brow. Gotta tell me who the lucky lady is. What, and let you snap her up? The sassy assassin batted his hand away. Not a chance. My future primer shall remain anonymous. Thank you very much. Mercury wasn't as subtle as he thought himself to be. Really, there was only one girl in the tower who was so much a give him a time of day. Yang squabbled with him all the time. Ruby still hadn't forgiven him for gumming up crescent rolls with glue. Nora only had eyes for Ren. Weiss and Winter were obviously spoken for, to say nothing of the beautiful disaster that was Willow. And Cinder, not a chance. Penny didn't even know what romance was. Poor thing. Blake, honestly, not too sure about that one. Sometimes it seemed that she was keen on him. At others, Yang, and still others, Ilya, of all people. Yeah, had to be her. He snapped at his fingers. It's Emerald, isn't it? His bodyguard whistled innocently. I can neither confirm nor deny that. You do realize Em's like a little sister to me? He cracked his knuckles when the assassin looked away. If you even think about breaking her heart. Got it. Mercury flung up his arms to stave off a big brother's lecture. I break her heart, you break me. Don't worry, I ain't suicidal. Em's the only girl for me. He winced but a little at something internal. Eventually, once I get around to telling her, I'll hold you to that. Naruto laughed. In that case, you'll have to get around her infatuation with Cinder. She's a hard nut to crack. Oh gods, Cinder, Emerald would be livid once she found out about this. Best not mention that for now. You know it. Mercury clapped him on the back and pivoted on a metal leg, already keen to depart. See you later, partner. Try not to die on me. Oh, and don't pester Ruby, Naruto hollered as he sped away. She finally got all that gunk out of Crescent Rose. You'll lose an arm. What do you take me for? A lolicon? One could never be too sure when it came to Mercury. Just the other day he professed his undying loyalty for Nora. It had been a prank, of course, but not necessarily the kindest. She nearly stove his head in once she realized, maybe he should tell him about that flower trap he'd left in his room. Some Oops, too late. Damn you! Naruto shook his head and bolted in the opposite direction, a rueful sigh. Never gets old. They're all crazy. Not that I'm any better. Rice really would have his hide if he was late again. To say nothing of her sister, Winter would probably sick Tyrion on him, or worse, Merlot. The good doctor had taken quite a bit of blood last time, and more than a bit of DNA besides. Always talking about tests, that one. Always thinking ways to make them better, faster, stronger. Blah. He'd never understand the man's fascination for all things grim. Why study them at all? What was the point of knowing their strengths and weaknesses? Merlot insisted he'd found a way to make them better, but really, grafting machine parts onto living grim, to say nothing of the modifications he'd made to himself, just seemed a recipe for disaster. He just seemed slimy somehow. Even after all this time, Naruto couldn't quite find it in him to trust the man. He was up to something. He just knew it. A small shiver stole through him, and he hastened his lazy walk like into a jog. He passed a grinning girl in an adjacent corridor, nearly colliding with her as she skipped across his path. Salem's tower was heaving with people these days. "Hello, cousin," she waved. "Having a nice day?" "See you later, Penny." Naruto muttered a half-hearted farewell in return before he rounded another corner. Nice girl. He didn't think Uncle Watts had family, but who was he to question the man? It took a good sort to look after his niece, not for the first time. He wondered if Penny was related to him at all. Really, they didn't look anything alike. "Wait for me!" He turned to find Nora racing after him, hopping on one leg as she struggled with her combat skirt on one of her boots. Naruto tactfully wrenched his gaze away and waited until she'd caught up. Even then, he waited until he was wholly certain she was decent. Nora had no shame sometimes, but this was brazen even for her. Why did he have a bad feeling about this? "You and the Shnees are gonna smash some White Fang, right?" A blue eye creaked open. "Yes," and she grabbed his hands. "Then I want in." A blonde brow arched down at her. "Really?" She giggled and bounced in place. It did interesting things to her bosom. "Yes, really." Naruto snapped his eyes upwards with a sputter, willing himself to meet her gaze and absolutely nothing else. "No ulterior motives at all?" "No." The other eyebrow rose, nor wilted beneath his gaze. All right. She looked about, searching for someone that simply wasn't there. "I kinda need to get her out of the tower for a bit." Even a blind man could see why. "You and Ren had another fight, didn't you?" She averted her gaze. "Maybe." "Nora," she said nothing. "And spill it, or I'll have Watts revoke your pancake privileges." The buddy girl recoiled, looking like she'd been stabbed in the heart. "You fiend!" Nora had taken to this lifestyle more than most, like Ren had not. They got along all right, make no mistake, but the fact remained, Nora was quite at home crushing skulls and smiting fools. Ren would rather hone his skills and practice with his semblance. Nora got to fight with strong people and wreak havoc with little in the way of consequences. Ren chose to isolate himself from others to avoid being infected by what he'd come to call their collective madness. As it were, Nora had embraced said insanity wholeheartedly. "We had a really bad fight this time," she muttered, scuffing one foot against the floor. "I told him I wanted to try the grim pools. He shouted at me, told him I was being foolish. He said I wouldn't be the Nora he knew if I went in there." His teammate turned her now teary eyes on him. The last brick on the wall of his resistance crumbled. "Did I do something wrong?" No, it's not your fault." He pinched the brow of his nose to stifle a growl. "If you want to come with us that badly, fine. You can be in the vanguard." "Yes," Nora squealed. "Be strong and hit stuff. Right, I can do that." She kissed his cheek. "You're the best." Naruto bit back the urge to roll his eyes. "So everyone keeps reminding me." Hopefully Blake was having a better time of things than him. Blake sighed and rolled her shoulders. "Idia, you can get off my back now. You're heavy." "No, warm, comfy." Her fellow faunus yawned and nuzzled closer. "Shut up and let me sleep, stupid." Whose idea had it been to come here? All right. hers. Menagerie had allies they could use, resources. She'd been the one to offer the idea at Salem's council, and it seemed a good idea at the time. Who better to stand than the chieftain's daughter? Chieftain's daughter, Ilia, lazy little chameleon though she was, followed her, of course. Like a lovesick puppy, she always clung to her side. Blake didn't have any more time to ponder on that, because the door before them crashed open, and all courage fled. "Hey, Mom," she smiled at the figure within. "Long time no see." Callie Belladonna shot across the threshold like an arrow loosed from a bow. "My baby." "There you are. You're late." Weiss was indeed cross with Naruto when he reached the landing pod. Her eyes were bright and her scowl dark. Still, Naruto couldn't bring himself to be angry with the little Schnee. Poor Weiss. Sometimes it felt like winter had stolen all her height. At least she was growing in other areas. Not that she'd ever mentioned that. She'd frozen in family, and she'd freeze his family jewels off. He needed those. He couldn't quite keep the smile from his face. "Aw, did you miss me?" A pale brow quirked. "You'll be missing a whole lot more if you say the pun you're thinking." Right. Totally wasn't going to make a nice pun there. Nope, let me." She huffed. "Honestly, you spent too much time with Shai-Long." Clad in her signature pale blue blouse / combat skirt with matching jacket and boots, she looked every bit the princess he thought she was, almost like a snow angel. Really? Nope, not saying that either. She'd try and thumb him over the head with Mertenaster. Matter of fact, she looked like she was going to try that regardless of what he did. In lieu of a compliment, he settled for another avenue of attack. There was one surefire way to distract her. "So, how was her son?" Weiss fluttered to the very roots of her hair. "Don't call him that." "Ah, why not?" An inky tendril manifested from her shoulder and waved at him as he spoke. Naruto grinned despite himself. "See, he's happy to see me." The parasite must have said something to her too, because the Schnee flushed deepened tenfold. You! Khaled, calm yourself, sister." The Winter interposed with a smile, laying a hand on hers. "He's here, and in good time. Surely that's what matters." While Weiss might have accepted the symbiote son with her, Winter had truly embraced her grim side. Today she looked every bit a daughter of Salem, clad in a stunning red and black dress, both as form-fitting as it was functional. Some might say a battle dress had no place on the battlefield. Naruto knew better. Winter made it work. She always did. His intended hadn't deigned to transform today, but he knew she could and would at a moment's notice. She had a cold sense about her this afternoon, as if she were ready to attack at the slightest provocation. She had, after all, taken to Salem's words better more than most. Accept what you are. She drowned those words into her heart and made them her own. Perhaps that was she was so set on him. Who could say? He didn't mind. Winter was Winter. They'd grown up together. She had been the very first to pursue him, and once she heard tell of Cinder's actions here today, he strongly suspected she wouldn't be the last. Big Sis was the sort to brag, and the two had struck up a vicious rivalry in recent months. Sure enough, Winter's gaze raked over him. "Are you prepared?" He checked his gear. "Yep, ready as I'll ever be." The White Fang were a good target these days, and also good press. He never understood what Lisa meant by that. If any press was good press, then how good were bad press? Then how good was bad press? Bah, semantics. In any case, the one's peaceful organization had been increasingly vicious and violent over the last 2 years. Kidnapping, murder. It seemed that there was no length they wouldn't stoop to. No one would mind if their numbers took a hit. It also served as something of a dry run for their little surprise in a few months. Unfortunately, Winter noticed Nora a heartbeat later. "Why is she here?" Her heart became as frigid as her namesake when she laid eyesight on the bubbly Grenadier. "This is a family affair." Nora flinched a little. Should I not be here? Naruto stepped between them. She asked to join us. I allowed it. Is there a problem? Her scowl certainly suggested that there would be. With a will, he resisted the urge to snap at her. For all his attempts to prevent it, something of a clique had begun to form in Salem's tower. There were those who subjected themselves to the grim pools and those who did not. Those who had called themselves chosen. They were precious few in comparison to those who hadn't, but there could be no denying they were undoubtedly stronger. Ruby, Winter, and Cinder seldom subscribed to the same sort the rest the rabble did of thing, but there were moments that worried him all the same. No, Weiss read his mood first, and bless her simple soul. It's not a problem, just unexpected. She looked away, the faintest hint of pink dusting her pale cheeks. I wanted this evening to be for us. Winter scoffed. Speak for yourself, sister. Hey, Naruto clicked his tongue. She's family. She comes. Winter subsided with a scowl. As you wish, beloved. Quick as a flash, she stepped to him. Cool lips took his cheek, lingering for a moment before pulling away. Whiskered cheek turned rose red. The argument on his tongue withered away like snow under a warm sun. Blast her and her public display of affections. She just had to get the last word in, didn't she? Not that he minded. He massaged his cheek, still haven't gotten used to that. Well, you'd best. I'm hardly about to let someone like her have you. Nora's head popped up over his shoulder and blew a raspberry at Winter. Nah. Weiss rolled her eyes at their antics, unable to keep the smile from her face. Children, the lot of you, on the bullhead now. Fun wasn't really something Weiss considered when attacking the White Fang outpost. All clear, my lady, her pilot intoned. You may descend when ready. But this did put a smile on her face. These last few years had made her body stronger and her heart harder. It would only ever soften for those she loved, no one else. Perhaps that was cruel of her. Wise discreet, better to love a choice few than none at all. She would not be like Jackus. No, never Jackus. Mother still visited him in the cells from time to time. Wise still couldn't bear to go down there. Speaking of down, her mind held nothing but the goal at hand. She paid attention to little else as the ground rushed up to meet her like an old friend. Behind her, she heard a distant whoop as Naruto dove down after her. Show off. She hit the soil in a pointed crouch and alighted perfectly among her prey. Naturally, they went wild. Men and women jolted upright off of logs and swarmed out of tents, caught wholly unaware by the sight of such an abrupt entrance. Naturally, it wasn't every day someone dive-bombed their campsite. She'd be insulted if they did. Her knees were still aching from the impact. It's a Schnee! Shoot her! Boys, you really don't want to do this. Weiss cocked her head. Surrender, and you'll be taken with minimal damage. The leader didn't listen. Nope, of course not. Masks! Put on your masks, you fools! All right. Weiss beamed as she regarded the red-headed terrorist who had given the order. It was all teeth. Have it your way. And two could play that game. Mask! And somewhere deep inside her soul, venom absolutely cackled. Copy. Darkness boiled over her body from head to toe as the parasite symbiote pushed itself outward and upward, allowing itself to grow and mold to her form. Weiss gave herself to it happily, blue eyes narrowing to vicious slits as her partner swarmed over her, shrouding her in strength. A ghastly mask flowed up and over her face, gaining jagged teeth and piercing white eyes. She cracked her neck, but once within her new armor and the suit mirrored the motion like a marionette, mimicking the motions of its master. Her foe shrieked, scrambled back. Oh, what the hell is that thing? Now then, Weiss grinned, her voice emerging with a delicious rasp. I'll let one of you live to tell the tale of what happened here. Any volunteers? Her grin redoubled as a trio of impacts resounded behind her. The rest of her family had landed. Well, no need to stand on ceremony then. With a grin, she stormed in. Previews. That went well, big brother. Naruto's scowl became a deep grin as he stepped off the bullhead. Aha! There you are, Elsa. Come give me a hug. So, marry me? Naruto choked on his steak. Welcome to Beacon. Ironwood tore at his hair. He wouldn't let this happen. He knew what was best for Atlas, best for Remnant. He would protect this world even if no one else would. His fist swung the door open. There was someone sitting behind his desk. "Good evening, General." "And who are you?" "My name isn't important." The hooded figure tilted his head, and for a moment he thought he had the impressing sight of a smiling face beneath the cowl. "Just think of me as a friend. One with a vested interest in the destruction of your enemies." End of chapter 11.